Good morning, my friends. Okay, you're gonna have to let me know how is the camera? It's my computer returned from Apple, and how is the screen and the sound? Is it all okay? They gave me a whole new case for my laptop, a whole new screen, and a whole new battery. It feels like they replaced parts of the keyboard. Like it's like a brand new computer. I don't even want to what? It's fuzzy? It doesn't look fuzzy on this end at all. Oh, Bessie, no, stop. It does not look blurry on this end even a little bit. I gotta go look. What on earth? Gotta go look. I can't even find Joyful Life on the internet. What happened? Where did Joyful Life go? Joyful Life. I can't find my own page. Do you think it's the internet? Let's look. Worse than before. It is. Okay, wait, I think that is internet because it's hold on. Let's do this. Let's shut off my internet. Let's shut off my internet and go dang it. I think it's my internet. The only thing I could do would be to shut off. I could try to connect to my phone so that we can see if I need to call Apple and, if I disappear for a second, hold on. I'm reconnected. Now I'm on hotspot. Is that any better? There's really no settings to adjust in this app. I don't know. I don't know. I hate and it's crystal clear. It's it's the faith. It's worse. Okay. Oh my goodness. Are you guys playing around now with y'all helping me? All right. Well, I'm reconnected to internet now. It's the best I can do. I don't know. No, you're right, Susan. I think it's the internet. I don't it's on this end, I'm crystal clear. Like crystal clear on this end. So, I have no idea. As long as you can hear me, that's all that matters, I guess. I don't know. I've reconnected to the internet again. Okay, I see it now, nice and clear, which means my computer is working fine. It's just the internet is in and out. The internet here has not been very good the last couple of weeks or last week since we got the storm. I mean, for crying out loud, schools are still on a half day delay because of our 3 inches of snow last week. So there's ice on stuff. And so, okay, at least I know my computer's fixed. All right, let's go. Sorry about that. January 15th, Joseph interprets two dreams. There you go. Now you can see the fuzzy boy. Genesis 41 through 23. Sometime later, Pharaoh's chief cupbearer and chief baker offended their royal master. Pharaoh became angry with these two officials and he put them in prison where Joseph was, in the palace of the captain guard. They remained in prison for quite some time, and the captain of the guard assigned them to Joseph, who looked after them. While they were in prison, Pharaoh's cupbearer and baker each had a dream one night, and each dream had its own meaning. When Joseph saw them the next morning, he noticed they both looked upset. Why do you look so worried today? He asked them, and they replied, we both had dreams last night, but no one can tell us what they mean. Interpreting dreams is God's business, Joseph replied. Go ahead and tell me your dreams. So the chief cupbearer told Joseph his first dream. In my dream, he said, I saw a grapevine in front of me. The vine had 3 branches, and it began to bud and blossom, and soon it produced clusters of ripe grapes. I was holding Pharaoh's wine cup in my hand, so I took a cluster of grapes and squeezed the juice into the cup. Then I placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand. This is what the dream means. Joseph said, the 3 branches represent 3 days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift you up and restore you to your position as chief cupbearer. And please remember me and do me a favor when things go well for you. Mention me to Pharaoh so he might let me out of this place, for I was kidnapped from my homeland for the land of the Hebrews, and now I'm here in prison, but I did nothing to deserve it. When the when the chief baker saw that Joseph had given the first dream such a positive interpretation, he said to Joseph, I had a dream too. In my dreams, there were 3 baskets of white pastries stacked on my head. The top basket contained all kinds of pastries for Pharaoh, but the birds came and ate them from the basket on my head. This is what the dream means, Joseph told him. The 3 baskets also represent 3 days. 3 days from now, Pharaoh will lift you up and impale your body on a pole. Then the birds will come and peck away at your flesh. Pharaoh's birthday came 3 days later, and he prepared a banquet for all his officials and staff. He summoned his chief cupbearer and chief baker to join the other officials. Then he restored the chief cupbearer to his former position so he could again hand Pharaoh his cup. But Pharaoh impaled the chief baker, just as Joseph had predicted when he interpreted his dream. Pharaoh's chief cupbearer, however, forgot all about Joseph, never giving him another thought. The death of Isaac, Genesis 35:28 through 29. Isaac lived for 180 years. Then he breathed his last and died at a ripe old age, joining his ancestors in death, and his sons Esau and Jacob buried him. Pharaoh's dreams, Genesis 41, 1 through 36. 2 years passed since Joseph had interpreted the dreams of Pharaoh's chief cupbearer and chief baker. 2 full years later, Pharaoh dreamed that he was standing on the bank of the Nile River. In his dream, he saw 7 fat, healthy cows come up out of the river and begin grazing in the marsh grass. Then he saw 7 more cows come up behind them from the Nile, but they were scrawny and thin. These cows stood beside the fat cows on the riverbank. Then the scrawny, thin cows ate the 7 healthy, fat cows. At this point in the dream, Pharaoh woke up. But he fell asleep again and had a second dream. This time he saw 7 heads of grain, plump and beautiful, growing on a single stalk. The 7 more heads of grain appeared, and these were shriveled and withered by the east wind. And these thin heads swallowed up the 7 plump, well formed heads. Then Pharaoh woke again and realized it was a dream. The next morning, Pharaoh was very disturbed by the dreams, so he called for all the magicians and wise men of Egypt. When Pharaoh told them his dreams, not one of them could tell him what they meant. Finally, the king's chief cupbearer spoke up. Today I have been reminded of my failure, he told Pharaoh. Some time ago you were angry with the chief baker and me, and you imprisoned us in the palace of the captain of the guard. And one night the chief baker and I each had a dream, and each dream had its own meaning. There was a young Hebrew man with us in prison who was the slave of the captain of the guard. We told him our dreams, and he told us what each of our dreams meant. And everything happened just as he had predicted. I was restored to my position as cupbearer, and the chief baker was executed and impaled on a pole. Pharaoh sent for Joseph at once. He was quickly brought from the prison. After he shaved and changed his clothes, he went in and stood before Pharaoh. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, I had a dream last night, and no one here could tell me what it means. But I have heard that when you hear about a dream, you can interpret it. It is beyond my power to do this, Joseph replied, but God can tell you what it means and set you at ease. So Pharaoh told Joseph his dream. In my dream, he said, I was standing on the bank of the Nile River. I saw seven fat, healthy cows come up out of the river and begin grazing in the marsh grass. But then I saw seven sick looking cows, scrawny and thin, come up after them. I've never seen such sorry looking animals in all of the land of Egypt. These thin, scrawny cows ate the seven fat cows. But afterwards, you wouldn't have known it, for they were still as thin and scrawny as before. Then I woke up. In my in my dream, I also saw seven heads of grain, full and beautiful, growing on a single stalk. Then seven more heads of grain appeared, but these were blighted, shriveled, and withered by the east wind. And the shriveled heads swallowed the seven healthy heads. I told these dreams to the magicians, but no one could tell me what they meant. Joseph responded, both of Pharaoh's dreams mean the same thing. God is telling Pharaoh in advance what he is about to do. The seven healthy cows and seven healthy heads of grain both represent 7 years of prosperity. The seven thin, scrawny cows that came up later and seven thin heads of grain withered by the east wind represent 7 years of famine. This will happen just as I have described it, for God has revealed to Pharaoh in advance what he is about to do. The next 7 years will be a period of great prosperity throughout the land of Egypt. But afterward, there will be 7 years of famine so great that all the prosperity will be forgotten in Egypt. Famine will destroy the land. The famine will be so severe that even the memory of the good years will be erased. As for having two similar dreams, it means that these events have been decreed by God, and He will soon make that happen. Therefore, Pharaoh should find an intelligent and wise man and put him in charge of the entire land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh should appoint supervisors over the land and let them collect 1/5 of all the crops during the 7 good years. Have them gather all the food produced in the good years that are just ahead and bring it to Pharaoh's storehouses. Store it away and guard it there so there will be food in the cities. That way there will be enough to eat when the 7 years of famine come to the land of Egypt. Otherwise, this famine will destroy this land. Joseph made ruler of Egypt. Genesis 41:37 through 57. Joseph's suggestions were well received by Pharaoh and his officials. So Pharaoh asked his officials, can we find anyone else like this man so obviously filled with the Spirit of God? Then Pharaoh told Joseph, since God has revealed the meaning of the dreams to you, clearly no one else is as intelligent or wise as you are. You will be in charge of my court, and all of my people will take orders from you. Only I, sitting on my throne, will have a rank higher than yours. Pharaoh said to Joseph, I hereby put you in charge of the entire land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh removed his signet ring from his hand and placed it on Joseph's finger. He dressed him in fine linen clothing and hung a gold chain around his neck. Then he had Joseph ride in the chariot reserved for his second in command. And wherever Joseph went, the command was shouted, kneel down. So Pharaoh put Joseph in charge of all of Egypt. And Pharaoh said to him, I am Pharaoh, but no one will lift a hand or foot in the entire land of Egypt without your approval. Then Pharaoh gave Joseph a new Egyptian name, Zaphenath Paneah. He also gave him a wife whose name was Asenath. She was the daughter of Potiphera, the priest of On. So Joseph took charge of the entire land of Egypt. He was 30 years old when he began serving in the court of Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. And when Joseph left Pharaoh's presence, he inspected the entire land of Egypt. As predicted, for 7 years the land produced bumper crops. During those years, Joseph gathered all the crops grown in Egypt and stored the grain from surrounding fields in the cities. He piled up a huge amount of grain like sand on the seashore. Finally, he stopped keeping records because there was too much to measure. During this time, before the first of the famine years, two sons were born to Joseph and his wife Asenath, the daughter of Potiphera, the priest of On. Joseph named his older son Manasseh, for he said, God has made me forget all my troubles and everyone in my father's family. Joseph named the second son Ephraim, for he said, God has made me fruitful in this land of my grief. At last, the 7 years of bumper crops throughout the land of Egypt came to an end. Then the 7 years of famine began, just as Joseph had predicted. The famine also struck all the surrounding countries, but throughout Egypt there was plenty of food. Eventually, however, the famine spread throughout the land of Egypt as well. And when the people cried out to Pharaoh for food, he told them, go to Joseph and do whatever he tells you. So, with severe famine everywhere, Joseph opened up the storehouses and distributed grain to the Egyptians, for the famine was severe throughout the land of Egypt, and people from all around came to Egypt to buy grain from Joseph because the famine was severe throughout the world. All right. Time is at. I gotta keep an eye on the clock. Registration for retreat opens in 13 minutes. All right. Learning to live above. We are on chapter 13. Passing up the comfortable. For with God nothing is impossible. Luke 1:37. As a woman, I can relate to passing up the excuse me. As a woman, I can relate to passing up the comfortable. How many times have I had to pass up those comfortable shoes to wear toe pinching, feet blistering heels? Or how about when I really want to wear my sweats and I have to squeeze into a dress? It's funny what we will do for the sake of fashion. There is something about the flesh that longs for the comfortable. We like to know what is going to happen, when it is going to happen, and how it is going to happen. Then we feel secure. Even if it is bad news, we take it much better if we just know all the details ahead of time. But God doesn't work in the comfortable. He wants us to be secure in Him, not in our abilities and our surroundings. So He will remove the props around us make us choose. This is the place where the children of Israel found themselves. They had been in Egypt for 400 years. Although it was brutal and oppressing, they had learned how to live under this bondage and knew what to expect. But after this time, God delivered them out of captivity and brought them to the outskirts of Canaan, which was the land He had promised them. When the spies they had sent into the land reported back, it was not good. The land was unbelievable, but the enemy standing between them and their promise was bigger and stronger than they were. They began to long for the old days in Egypt. Isn't that interesting that they would want to go back to the place where they knew they would be killed, or at the very least put back into captivity? If they thought they were going to die either way, then why would they want to die in Egypt rather than in Canaan? It's because they knew what to expect in Egypt. They had learned how to live under the captivity and bondage. There was a sense of security in knowing what would happen as opposed to the fear of the unknown. You see, going forward on the path of God has given us going forward on the path God has given us will require us to continually face our fear of the unknown. If we have to know everything that is going on and how it is all going to work out, then we will have to go backwards to get that. God will not give us all the details of how it will happen because He is asking us to trust Him. Remaining in the comfortable and the evident is dangerous because it causes us to rely on what we can see and what we can do. Stepping out requires us to rely on what God can see and what God can do. He will continue to take us into situations where we are unable to see how it will work out and we are unable to do anything about it. It is at that point where we must decide, walk by faith or by sight. Trust Him or trust our own understanding. Go back to comfortable or step out into the unknown. The Israelites were about to cross over into a new place that God had given them, and in the land there was great fruitfulness and provision. The path that God had given them to walk was possible with Him, but impossible without Him. Now that sounds good, but what we must realize is that when a path is impossible without God, then it looks and appears to us as impossible. If we look directly at the situation, then we will immediately realize that there is no way we can achieve the desired outcome. When we are in an impossible place, it can look extremely scary. All the evidence is pointing in the opposite direction of what God says. There is nothing tangible that assures us that it will all work out. In fact, the circumstances are showing that it will most likely be disastrous. When God told my husband to step out of his job of 21 years and into a field about which he knew nothing, it was a frightening step. Chris had to leave everything that was secure and familiar. In the new position, there was intense tests and trials, and it would have been much easier to go back. But the next step would not have been there had he not stepped away from his comfort zone. Since then, God has opened up some incredible doors in our lives and has brought us into a new place. I am so thankful for my husband's willingness to trust and obey. It may look impossible, but that gives God an opportunity for greater glory. He will make the way for you to walk out of every plan He has for your life. You need only to trust and obey. So pass up the comfortable and walk into the spectacular. Good, good, good stuff. All right, let me scroll through the chat real quick here. Okay. I don't know, Lois. I don't know. Because the internet is annoying nuisance is why. It's so frustrating. It's nothing is ever consistent. It's really frustrating. You're right, Nikki. We sit in the comfort zone because I just got my fingernail stuck in my hair. The comfort zone is only comfortable because we understand it, not because it's actually comfortable. We just know it. I stayed overweight for many years because eating the food I was eating was more comfortable than the what I felt would be deprivation, the thought of deprivation. Um, yeah, little did I know, wasn't deprivation at all. Registration links will be posted in the Wholly Healthy Facebook group exactly at 9 a.m. and an email will go out. So 9 a.m. I actually have to go. I've got to pray, and then I'm not gonna be able to cook live this morning because registration is open and I need to be available for issues with registration and questions. And so, um, everybody pray that the internet will work well for everyone, that everyone that wants to be at the KJ, at the KJ, at the retreat, Joyful Life with KJ retreat, that everyone that wants to go will get in. But I also pray for great sales. So to make it work, got to have a certain amount of people to make it financially work. And so it's happening one way or the other. 9 o'clock, 9 o'clock, registration opens. All right, let's go ahead and pray. I'm nervous. God our Father, we thank you for our time together. Thank you for the reminder of your faithfulness and the promises that you give to us every single day. I pray that you will help each of us today to recognize your the little pieces of love you give us through the day, the little whispers in our ear. Help us to take time today to spend time in your presence and to just bask in the love that you've given us all. God, I lift each person up to you today. I know the prayer requests are many. We continue to pray for Lizzie and for her healing, God, that you will just heal her body from whatever is taking over. God, as we go through our day, may we make choices that are honoring to you, that um, breathe life into others, and choices that inspire others, choices that heal our bodies and renew our energy. Just help us to remain in your love today. In your precious name, amen. All right, friends, thank you so much. I hope you have an amazing day. Thank you, Mary. And I hope to see you all at retreat, or at least a whole bunch of you. All right, go register.